The city called him many things: the ghost, the devil in a tailored suit, the coldest man in the underworld. But on one freezing November night, Damiano Vitali became something no one had ever imagined. A liar. Not for money, not for power, not for revenge, for a girl he had never met. Rain washed over Manhattan in silver sheets, turning the streets into mirrors of white headlights and red brake lights. At 10:47 p.m., the underground parking garage beneath the Belmont Hotel echoed with the sound of expensive engines and polished shoes. Damiano Vitali walked alone, 34 years old, 6 feet 3. A charcoal overcoat resting perfectly across broad shoulders, black leather gloves, no bodyguards walking beside him. They stayed 20 feet behind because that was how he preferred it. Fear traveled faster when a man walked alone. The meeting upstairs had lasted exactly 43 minutes. Too long. A shipment through Brooklyn, a dispute with the Russians, another politician asking for favors he couldn't afford. Nothing unexpected. Nothing worth remembering. He reached his armored Mercedes Maybach and unlocked the driver's door. The garage was unusually quiet. Too quiet. His instincts noticed before his mind did. Something felt wrong. He slid into the driver's seat, closed the door. The cabin sealed itself from the outside world. Silence. Only the soft hum of the engine waiting to wake. His hand reached for the ignition. Then, a tiny sound. Leather shifting, barely audible, from the back seat. Damiano didn't react. Most men would have turned around. He didn't. Instead, his right hand slowly disappeared beneath his coat. The suppressed pistol rested comfortably in his palm. Only then did he speak. His voice was calm. "Whoever you are, you have 3 seconds." Silence. 3. Nothing. 2. A quiet breath. Then a trembling whisper. "Please don't shoot." His eyes finally lifted to the rearview mirror. 2 frightened brown eyes stared back at him. Young, terrified, hidden behind the rear seat. She couldn't have been older than 23. Dark curls escaped from what had once been an elegant hairstyle. A simple white wedding dress clung to her shoulders, soaked by the rain. The lace at one sleeve had torn. Her breathing was uneven. One shoe was missing. The other was stained with mud. She held a small canvas bag against her chest, as though it contained the last pieces of her life. Damiano slowly turned in his seat. Neither of them spoke. Outside, somewhere beyond the concrete walls, engines roared. SUVs. Several of them. The girl's face turned pale. "They found me," she whispered. Then she looked directly into his eyes. It wasn't hope. It was desperation. "The exit checkpoint," she breathed. "They're searching every car," she swallowed. Then said 5 words that neither of them would ever forget. "Please, pretend I'm your wife." Damiano looked at her for a long moment. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she was running. He didn't know who wanted her. He only knew one thing. No frightened bride climbed into the car of a mafia boss unless every other choice had already disappeared. Outside, tires screeched. His security radio crackled. "Boss," one of his men. "They're blocking the garage." Marchetti soldiers. "They're checking every vehicle leaving the hotel." Damiano looked once more at the girl. "Get down." She obeyed instantly, pulling a black travel blanket across herself. Only a few loose strands of dark hair remained visible. He started the engine. The 12-cylinder motor purred to life, smooth, silent. The security gate lifted. His convoy rolled forward. One armored SUV in front. His Maybach, another SUV behind. The checkpoint appeared ahead. 6 black vehicles blocked the exit. Men carrying assault rifles stood beneath the rain. Their suits were expensive. Their eyes were not. One stepped forward and raised a hand. The convoy stopped. A tall man leaned toward Damiano's window. "Evening, Mr. Vitali." Damiano lowered the glass only halfway. "What?" "We're looking for someone." "I assumed." "A young woman." The man smiled politely. Ran away from her wedding. Damiano said nothing. The man continued. White dress, dark hair, about 23. We've received information she may have entered this garage. Silence. Rain struck the roof. Neither man blinked. Finally, Damiano spoke. My wife is in the back. The guard raised an eyebrow. Your wife? Motion sickness. Long evening. I'd rather take her home. The guard glanced toward the dark rear window. I'll need to see her. No. A single word. Flat. Final. The guard smiled again. Smiles were dangerous. So even the great Damiano Vitali has secrets. Inside the car, Elena pressed both hands over her mouth. She could hear every heartbeat. Every raindrop. Every second. The guard stepped closer. Then, the blanket shifted almost invisibly. Just enough. A glimpse. White satin. A wedding shoe. His eyes narrowed. For half a second, he looked uncertain. Then he stepped back. My mistake. He tapped twice on the roof. The barricade opened. The convoy rolled forward. No one spoke until the city lights disappeared behind them. Only then did Damiano finally ask, What's your name? The girl stared through the rain-covered window, almost too quietly to hear. Elena. She paused, then added, If you hadn't stopped, I would have married a man I would rather die than belong to. Damiano kept his eyes on the empty highway. He didn't answer. But in the side mirror, far behind them, one of Marchetti's men stood beneath the rain, holding up a phone, zooming in, taking a photograph, not of Elena, of the license plate. The rain stayed with them long after the city disappeared. It beat softly against the armored glass. It blurred the skyline until New York became nothing more than distant lights fading into darkness. Neither of them spoke. Damiano kept both hands on the steering wheel. Elena remained in the back seat, clutching the small canvas bag against her chest, as though letting go of it would mean losing the last piece of her mother. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was cautious, the kind shared by two strangers who had survived the same danger without knowing whether another waited around the next corner. Finally, Damiano broke it. Come sit in the front. She hesitated, then slowly climbed into the passenger seat. The heater warmed the cabin. For the first time that night, she stopped shaking. Barely. Damiano glanced at her once. You have 30 seconds. She frowned. For what? To convince me not to turn this car around. She looked out at the rain. My name is Elena Rossi. I know. My mother died 8 months ago. He waited. She owned a small shipping dock. A legal business. A tiny one. Nothing important. Her voice cracked. At least, that's what I believed. She opened the canvas bag. Inside were only 4 things. A worn Bible, an old photograph, a ring wrapped in cloth, and a thick envelope tied with faded blue ribbon. My mother borrowed money after my father disappeared. She thought it was a normal loan. It wasn't. Damiano already knew where the story was going. She continued anyway. Every month the debt grew. Interest on interest. Fees no one explained. When she died, they told me the debt belonged to me, and the only way to erase it, she couldn't finish. Damiano did. Was marriage. A tear slid silently down her cheek. She nodded. Salvatore Marchetti's son. The wedding was tonight. He never wanted me. He wanted the dock. The words hung quietly between them. Damiano knew that dock. Everyone in New York's underworld knew it. It sat between 2 shipping routes already controlled by the Marchetti family. One missing piece. One stubborn piece of land, enough to cost millions every year, enough to destroy a family over. He drove another mile before asking, Why didn't you go to the police? A sad smile crossed Elena's face. Some of them were guests at the wedding. Damiano said nothing. He believed her. Outside, the rain slowly became snow. Tiny white flakes drifted through the headlights. Too early. Winter wasn't supposed to arrive for another 2 weeks. His phone vibrated. Marco, his oldest lieutenant. Damiano answered. What? Boss. They know it was your car. I assumed. They're checking toll cameras. We've already changed vehicles twice. It won't matter. Marco hesitated. There's something else. What? The license plate photo reached Marchetti. Silence. They've offered $2 million for the girl. Elena lowered her eyes. Damiano ended the call. She whispered, I'm sorry. He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed another button on the dashboard. The navigation system changed routes. The highway disappeared. A narrow mountain road replaced it. Elena noticed immediately. Where are we going? Not home. I thought your estate. They'll search it first. You have somewhere else? Very few people know it exists. She studied him. You trust me? No. The answer came instantly. I trust Marchetti even less. For the first time, she laughed. It was quiet, short, almost accidental, but it surprised both of them. Damiano looked at her. It changed her entire face. She looked younger, less frightened, almost peaceful. He looked back at the road before she noticed. Snow thickened. Visibility shrank. The road climbed higher into the mountains north of the city. Trees crowded both sides. No houses, no lights, nothing. Another 30 minutes passed. Then the dashboard flashed red. Signal lost. No GPS. No network. No calls. Only the road. The wind grew louder. Snow slammed against the windshield. The tires slipped. Damiano tightened his grip. This wasn't in the forecast. It wasn't. A fallen pine tree suddenly appeared through the storm. He turned the wheel sharply. The Maybach missed it by inches before sliding sideways across the frozen road. The vehicle stopped only a few feet from the edge of a steep ravine. Neither of them moved. The engine idled quietly. Elena slowly released the breath she had been holding. Outside. The storm swallowed everything. Damiano stepped out into the freezing wind. Within seconds, snow covered his shoulders. He walked ahead, returned 2 minutes later. The road's gone. What do you mean? Landslide. She stared at him. So we're not reaching the safe house tonight. Can we go back? He looked behind them. The road they had climbed was disappearing beneath fresh snow. No. The word landed heavily. We're trapped. The wind howled across the mountains. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint light flickered between the trees. Elena noticed it first. She pointed. There. Damiano narrowed his eyes. An old cabin, almost hidden beneath snow. No electricity. No smoke. Abandoned. Or so it seemed. He started the engine again. We stay there until morning. Neither of them knew. Someone else had already reached the mountains hours earlier. Far below, 3 black SUVs turned onto the same road. Their headlights disappeared into the storm. Leading them was Salvatore Marchetti's most trusted hunter, a man who had never failed to bring anyone back, dead or alive. The cabin had been forgotten by the world, or at least, it wanted people to believe that. Snow covered most of the roof. The windows were dark. The wooden porch leaned slightly under years of winter storms. Yet when Damiano stepped inside, everything was exactly where he remembered. A stone fireplace, a worn leather sofa, a heavy oak table, shelves filled with canned food. Firewood stacked neatly beside the wall. Nothing luxurious, nothing unnecessary. This place, Elena whispered, belongs to you, my brother. He answered while striking a match. He built it. The fire slowly came alive. Orange light filled the room. The silence felt different here. Not dangerous, just lonely. Elena stood near the fireplace, rubbing warmth back into her fingers. Only now did Damiano notice the bruise around her left wrist. Dark purple. Fresh. His eyes rested on it for only a second. Marchetti? She nodded. His son. Silence. Damiano looked away. If he kept looking, he knew he might ask questions he wasn't ready to hear. He disappeared into a small storage room, returned carrying 2 blankets. One landed gently across her shoulders. The other he placed on the sofa. You can have the bedroom. She frowned. What about you? I've slept on worse. You don't even know me. No. Then why help me? He looked into the fire. When someone is drowning, you don't ask whether they deserve air. It was the longest sentence she had heard him speak. Dinner was simple. Soup, bread, black coffee. Neither complained. Halfway through the meal, Elena quietly stood. Without saying anything, she washed both bowls, dried them, returned every plate exactly where she had found it. Damiano noticed. He didn't thank her. She didn't expect him to. Some things didn't need words. The storm continued through the night. Wind screamed against the cabin walls. Branches scraped softly across the roof. Sleep came slowly. Around 2 in the morning, a loud crash echoed outside. Elena woke instantly. She found Damiano already standing beside the window, gun in hand. What was that? A tree. You sure? No. He opened the front door just enough to listen. Nothing. Only snow. Only wind. He closed it again. Locked it. Without another word, he sat in the chair facing the entrance. The pistol remained on his knee. He stayed there until sunrise. Morning arrived quietly. The storm had buried the entire mountain. The road no longer existed, just endless white. Elena stepped outside. The cold stole her breath. She smiled anyway. I've never seen snow this deep. Damiano looked at her. You've never been this far north. No. She laughed softly as she nearly disappeared to her knees. For a brief moment, she looked nothing like the frightened bride from 2 nights ago. She looked free. The days blended together. 1 became 3. 3 became 7. Then 2 weeks. The roads remained closed. No signal. No visitors. No world beyond the mountains. Life became surprisingly simple. Every morning, Damiano chopped wood. Elena made coffee. He repaired broken shutters. She quietly stitched torn curtains with a tiny sewing kit she carried everywhere. One afternoon, he walked into the living room, stopped. The curtain hanging beside the fireplace looked different. Perfectly repaired. He touched the careful stitching. You fixed it. I couldn't stop looking at the tear. He nodded once. Nothing more. But later that evening, when she wasn't watching, he smiled. Just once. Barely. They rarely spoke during the day. Instead, they left notes, a habit neither remembered starting. Coffee's on the stove. Wood stacked behind the shed. Don't forget your gloves. The soup needs salt. Tiny pieces of paper. Tiny conversations. The house slowly stopped feeling empty. One afternoon, Damiano found Elena outside, standing alone in the snow, holding one of his pistols. He froze. She wasn't pointing it carelessly. She wasn't frightened. Her grip was perfect. Her stance balanced. She squeezed the trigger. Click. Empty chamber. Again. Click. Again. Smooth. Controlled. You've done this before. She turned, a little embarrassed. My father taught me. I thought he disappeared. He did. When I was 14. He believed. She looked down at the pistol, that every daughter should know how to survive. Damiano walked closer, adjusted her elbow slightly. Lower. She obeyed. Again. Click. Better. For the next hour, he taught her without saying much. Small corrections. Tiny movements. No compliments. No criticism. Just patience. It was the first thing they had done together. Not as protector and stranger, but as 2 people. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She found a framed photograph on the bookshelf. 2 young men, almost identical. One smiled easily. The other didn't smile at all. Damiano entered quietly. My brother. He looked at the picture. He built this place. He loved mountains. She noticed something. You look happier there. I was. Silence settled again. Finally, she asked carefully, what happened to him? Damiano's jaw tightened. He was murdered. No more, no less. She understood the conversation was over. Far below the mountain, inside a black SUV, a phone vibrated. A location appeared on the screen. One blinking red dot. The driver smiled. I found them. Across from him, a scar ran from one eye to his jaw. The man everyone called Luca Voss leaned forward. Marchetti's most feared hunter. He looked at the map only once. They've been hiding in the wrong mountain. He chambered a round into his rifle. Tomorrow, we go hunting. Snow continued falling outside the cabin. Neither Damiano nor Elena had any idea that the peace they had slowly built over the last 2 weeks would be gone before sunrise. The first shot came just before dawn, not at the cabin, at the silence around it. A flock of birds exploded from the pine trees. The horse tied behind the shed panicked. Damiano's eyes opened instantly. He was already reaching for his pistol before he was fully awake. The cabin remained quiet. Too quiet. He stood, walked to the window. Nothing. Only snow. Only trees. Then, a flash. Sunlight reflecting off glass. Number. A rifle scope. He dropped to the floor. The window shattered a heartbeat later. Glass exploded across the room. The bullet buried itself deep inside the stone fireplace. Down. Elena was already on the floor. She didn't scream. She crawled beside the kitchen counter, exactly as he would have told her. Another shot. Another window disappeared. The hunter wasn't trying to scare them. He was measuring them, learning how they moved. Damiano slowly peeked over the edge of the wall. Nothing. The mountain had become the perfect hiding place. White snow, dark trees. A sniper only needed one opening, one mistake. He pulled a small radio from his backpack. Dead. Still no signal. We leave. Elena looked outside. Through that, we stay. They burn the cabin. She believed him, without another question. They moved through the back door. The freezing wind hit them immediately. Snow reached almost to Elena's knees. Damiano stayed in front. Every few seconds he stopped, listening. Watching, the mountain itself felt alive. Somewhere, someone watched every step they took. Then, a voice echoed through the trees. Calm, almost friendly. Damiano Vitali. Neither of them answered. I know you can hear me. The voice drifted between the pines. Give me the girl. You walk away. Damiano quietly pushed Elena behind him. Keep walking, she whispered. Who is he? Luca Voss. She saw something change in Damiano's face. Not fear. Recognition. The hunter? He nodded once. He never misses. The forest became silent again. Then, bang. The bullet struck the tree inches from Damiano's head. Wood exploded. Luca wasn't missing. He was steering them, driving them exactly where he wanted. They reached an abandoned ranger trail, hidden beneath snow. Damiano suddenly stopped. Kneel. Elena obeyed instantly. A thin metal wire stretched across the path, almost invisible. Tripwire, connected to a fragmentation grenade buried beneath snow. She stared. I would have... Yes. He carefully cut the wire. Someone hadn't simply followed them. Someone had arrived before them. Luca had turned the mountain into a trap. Hours passed. The cold became unbearable. Finally, they found shelter beneath a rocky cliff. Elena noticed blood on the snow. Small drops, fresh. She looked at Damiano. You're hurt. My shoulder. When? I didn't notice. She gently opened his coat. The bullet had grazed him. Nothing fatal. Still bleeding. She tore a strip from the bottom of her wedding dress. Wrapped the wound tightly. He watched her work. You keep destroying that dress. She smiled faintly. It wasn't mine anyway. For the first time in years, Damiano laughed. Quietly. Only once. It disappeared almost as quickly as it came, but Elena heard it. As night approached, they reached another abandoned cabin. Smaller. Older. Inside, there was just enough firewood for one night. Elena finally asked the question she had carried since they met. Why did you really help me? Damiano stared into the fire. My brother. She waited. He was supposed to become head of the family. He died 4 years ago. They said it was business. They lied. Silence. I found evidence. What kind? Financial records? Fake debts? Fake contracts? The same pattern used against your mother. Elena slowly looked toward the envelope inside her bag. Without speaking, she handed it to him. He untied the faded ribbon. Inside, old loan documents, payment records, a letter. Damiano's breathing stopped. The signature. Salvatore Marchetti. His own handwriting. But another signature beneath it caught Damiano's attention. A second name. One he hadn't seen in years. His eyes narrowed. This, he whispered. This changes everything. What is it? My brother signed this. Elena stared at him. Impossible. He couldn't have. He died before. He didn't sign it willingly. Damiano looked at the faded ink. He was investigating Marchetti. The same thing you were. He knew. And that's why they killed him. The fire crackled softly. Everything suddenly connected. The debt, the dock, the murder. None of it had been separate. It had always been the same war. Outside, snow crunched beneath heavy boots. 1, 2, 3, not one hunter. Many. Voices, flashlights, dogs. Luca had found them. Again. Damiano quietly extinguished the fire. Darkness swallowed the cabin. He whispered, No matter what happens, don't stop running. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. You don't get to choose. I already did. The front door exploded inward. Gunfire filled the night. Damiano shoved Elena behind a stone wall. 3 bullets ripped through the cabin. He fired twice. One man fell. Another disappeared into darkness. Then, a deafening crack echoed above them. The damaged roof collapsed. A burning beam crashed between them. Damiano? I'm here? She tried to reach him. Another shot rang out. Without thinking, Elena threw herself forward. The bullet meant for Damiano struck her high in the shoulder. She gasped, collapsed into the snow. Time stopped. Damiano caught her before she hit the ground. Blood spread across the white snow. For the first time since becoming head of the Vitali family, the coldest man in New York forgot every rule he had ever lived by. He looked up into the darkness and spoke with a voice that none of Luca's men had ever heard. If she dies, I won't leave a single one of you alive. High above the trees, Luca lowered his rifle. A slow smile appeared on his scarred face. Finally, Damiano Vitali had become emotional, exactly as Marchetti had planned. The helicopter landed just before sunrise. Its blades cut through the mountain wind like thunder. Marco jumped out before it had fully touched the ground. The moment he saw the blood on Elena's shoulder, his expression changed. Boss. Damiano carried her aboard without answering. She had lost too much blood, but she was still conscious, barely. As the helicopter lifted into the gray morning sky, she reached weakly for his sleeve. Don't. He looked down. Don't let them take my mother's dock. Even now. She wasn't thinking about herself. He nodded once. I won't. It was not a promise. It was a certainty. 3 hours later, the helicopter landed inside an abandoned warehouse along the East River. Not the Vitali estate. Too obvious. Only 6 people knew this place existed. Marco, Dr. Sofia Morelli, 2 loyal soldiers, Damiano, and now, Elena. The surgery lasted 42 minutes. The bullet had passed cleanly through her shoulder. No permanent damage. When the doctor finally stepped outside, Damiano was still standing exactly where she had left him. She'll recover. He closed his eyes. Only for a second. Relief was dangerous. He allowed himself exactly 1 breath. Nothing more. Later that afternoon, Marco placed a folder on the table. We caught one. Damiano looked up. Luca's sniper. He talked? No. Marco placed a flash drive beside the folder, but his phone did. Damiano inserted it into a laptop. Maps. Payments. Encrypted messages. Photographs. One image froze him completely. His older brother, Leon Vitale, standing beside Salvatore Marchetti, both smiling. The photo was dated 3 weeks before Leon was murdered. Marco frowned. It makes Leon look like a traitor. Damiano shook his head. No. He zoomed in. Leon wasn't smiling. He was wearing a hidden wire beneath his jacket. The reflection in the window exposed it. He was undercover. Marco slowly understood. He wasn't negotiating. He was collecting evidence. Damiano nodded. And someone exposed him. Silence filled the room. Only one person had known about Leon's investigation. Someone inside the Vitale family. Someone very close. The betrayal hadn't come from outside. It had come from home. Across the city, inside Marchetti's shipping port, Salvatore Marchetti poured himself a glass of whiskey. The old man wasn't angry. He was disappointed. Luca stood nearby. You failed. I wounded the girl. I wanted her alive. Luca remained silent. Marchetti looked out over the harbor. Hundreds of cargo containers stretched toward the water. Do you know why I wanted that dock? Luca didn't answer. It isn't the land. It never was. He pointed toward the sea. Everything entering this city passes through that channel. Control the channel, and you control the city. He smiled faintly. People always think power comes from guns. They're wrong. It comes from supply. For 4 years, one woman stood between me and complete control. He finished his drink. Tomorrow, we end this. That evening, Elena woke. The room was quiet. Soft light spilled through old factory windows. Her shoulder burned. She tried to sit up. A note rested on the bedside table. The doctor said not to move your arm. Soup is downstairs. No signature. None was needed. She smiled. Slowly, she walked downstairs. Damiano stood near the warehouse window, looking toward the river. You should be resting. I was. She noticed another envelope on the table. The documents? He nodded. I had them verified. They're real. The debt was fabricated. The signatures were forged. My mother's land was always ours. Yes, tears filled her eyes. Not because of the land, because for the first time in nearly a year, someone had finally believed her. The warehouse doors suddenly opened. An elderly woman entered. Small, gray-haired, walking with a wooden cane, but every guard immediately stepped aside. Nana Bell, Elena whispered. The old woman smiled. My little girl. They embraced carefully. Nana reached into her coat. She removed a weathered leather notebook. I've been keeping this since your mother died. Inside were copies of every loan payment, every altered contract, every handwritten instruction Marchetti had sent to his accountant. And at the very back, a single letter, signed by Leon Vitale, addressed to a federal prosecutor, never delivered. Damiano read only the first page. His hands trembled. Leon had uncovered everything. The fake debts, the port, the politicians, the judges, even the man inside the Vitale family who betrayed him. One name, only one. Damiano whispered it. Ricardo. Marco looked up sharply. The underboss? He was my brother's closest friend. He sold him. Silence. Years of unanswered questions ended in one heartbeat. The next morning, news spread across New York. Damiano Vitali had requested a meeting. Public. At Marchetti shipping port. No ambush. No hidden guns. Just both families. Face to face. Marco looked at him. This could start a war. Damiano answered quietly. It already did. He looked toward Elena. She stood beside the window, holding her mother's documents. No longer hiding. No longer running. Tomorrow, she would walk back into the place where she had almost been forced into a marriage. But this time, she wasn't going as a victim. She was going to take back everything that had been stolen. And somewhere, watching the same sunrise, Salvatore Marchetti smiled, because he believed Damiano had made one fatal mistake. He had chosen love, and men in love always left something unprotected. Morning arrived without rain. For the first time in weeks, the sky above New York was perfectly clear. The harbor shimmered beneath the pale sunlight. Cargo ships rested silently against the docks. Workers stopped what they were doing. News had already spread. 2 families, 1 port, 1 final meeting. No one believed everyone would leave alive. Salvatore Marchetti arrived first. 3 black SUVs, 20 armed men, lawyers, politicians. Even 2 police captains stood nearby, pretending they were only there to keep the peace. Power always liked witnesses, especially borrowed power. 10 minutes later, another convoy entered the port. Only 5 vehicles. Damiano stepped out alone. No body armor, no visible weapon. His men stayed behind him. Marco frowned. Boss? Damiano raised one hand. No one fires. Not unless I do. Then, everyone looked toward the final car. The passenger door opened. Elena stepped out. Not in a wedding dress, not hiding, not afraid. She wore a simple cream-colored coat. The bandage beneath her sleeve remained hidden. In one hand, she carried her mother's leather folder. In the other, the faded Bible that had traveled with her from the night she escaped. Marchetti smiled. You came back. I always knew you would. Elena looked directly into his eyes. I came back because you stole something that never belonged to you. The old man laughed. You think papers change reality? No, she answered calmly. Truth does. She placed the documents on the long wooden table between both families. One by one, every forged contract, every fake payment, every altered signature, every instruction Marchetti had written to his accountant. Finally, she placed Leon Vitali's original letter on top. Silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. Marchetti's lawyer reached for the papers. Damiano spoke quietly. Touch them, and you lose the hand. The lawyer stepped back. Nonna Bell slowly walked forward. Nobody had noticed her arrive. She looked older than anyone remembered. Yet when she began speaking, the entire dock listened. I watched her mother sign those papers. I watched your accountant replace them. She looked directly at Marchetti. You thought poor people never kept copies. A second voice answered from behind. So did he. Everyone turned. A black government SUV rolled into the port. A federal prosecutor stepped out. Behind him, 2 U.S. Marshals. The prosecutor held another folder. We received these documents 4 years ago. He looked at Marchetti. They were delayed, but never destroyed. He opened the folder. Inside were Leon Vitali's complete investigation files. Every missing page, every missing signature, every missing photograph, including one picture. Ricardo secretly meeting Marchetti the night before Leon's murder. Marco stared in disbelief. It was really him. Damiano never looked away from Marchetti. He had already known. Ricardo suddenly drew a pistol. Everything happened at once. He grabbed Elena, pressed the gun against her head. No one move. The dock froze. Ricardo laughed nervously. You think this changes anything? I built the Vitali family. I should have been boss. Damiano remained perfectly still. Let her go. No. Kill me. Ricardo smiled. I'd rather watch you suffer. Elena suddenly remembered something. A lesson in the mountains. Lower your shoulder. Turn with the movement. Don't fight the weapon. Redirect it. She moved. Fast. Her injured shoulder screamed with pain. The gun shifted just enough. One shot echoed across the harbor. The bullet flew harmlessly into the water. Damiano was already moving. 3 steps. 1 punch. Ricardo collapsed. The pistol slid across the concrete. No second chances. No dramatic speech. The U.S. Marshals handcuffed him before he could stand. The war ended in less than 10 seconds. Marchetti looked around. His politicians stepped away. His lawyers closed their briefcases. Even Luca lowered his rifle. One after another, his own men quietly walked away. Power built on lies always collapses the same way. Alone. Marchetti looked at Elena. Then at Damiano. So, it ends like this. Damiano answered calmly. No. It ended the day she refused to marry your son. The old man lowered his head. For the first time in 30 years, Salvatore Marchetti had nothing left to control. The marshals led him away. He never looked back. Spring arrived early that year. The snow melted from the mountains. The trees around the cabin turned green again. Elena officially became the owner of the port, not because Damiano gave it to her, because it had always belonged to her family. She restored the docks, kept every honest worker employed, named one warehouse after her mother, another after Leon Vitali. Weeks later, the same black Maybach waited outside the old chapel overlooking the river. Damiano stood beside it, wearing the same dark suit. Only one thing was different. He wasn't alone anymore. The chapel doors opened. Elena walked toward him. This time, in a wedding dress she had chosen herself. Simple, elegant, nothing extravagant. Exactly the kind she wanted. Marco quietly handed Damiano the keys. The same car. Damiano smiled faintly. It should be. After the ceremony, they climbed into the back seat together, the same place where they had first met. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Almost exactly like that night, Elena laughed. You know, I never actually asked whether you were married. Damiano looked at her. I wasn't. You lied very convincingly. It was the first time. She smiled. The only lie you ever told. He reached for her hand, held it gently. I wasn't lying. She looked confused. When I called you my wife, I already wanted it to become true. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Neither of them spoke again. They didn't need to. Outside, the city continued exactly as it always had. Ships arrived, people hurried home. Traffic filled the streets. Life moved forward. Inside the car, everything was quiet, warm, complete. She had once hidden in the back seat, begging a stranger to pretend she was his wife. He never pretended. Not when he drove her out of the city. Not when he stood between her and a bullet. Not when he chose her over his empire, and certainly not when he admitted that every house he owned had felt empty, until she walked into it. The same road that had once carried a runaway bride, now carried a husband and wife toward the life they had chosen together. Some lies are told to save a life. Some truths are discovered because of them. And sometimes, the only lie that ever mattered becomes the truest love of all.